Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Morning Bible. I have finally had that haircut that I was talking about, but I've been wearing a hat all day, and so my hair actually looks really rubbish, so the hat's staying on. But you can get a quick preview. My sister did a good job, even if it's been flattened a lot by my cap. I hope you're all having a wonderful day thus far. In theory, you're watching this in the morning, but you can watch it whenever you want. I'm not the boss for you. We are in Luke, once again, chapter 20. And we've got a nice little passage today. Not yesterday, it was a couple of days ago, I'm not gonna lie. The other day we were looking at the chief priests in the temple decided to send some spies in to catch Jesus out. Jesus has rocked up in Jerusalem now, he's finally here, and he's in the main temple and he's preaching, and a lot of the chief priests there aren't very happy about this because they didn't really invite Jesus or give him permission. He's kind of teaching quite crazy radical things to them as well, and things that they don't agree with, not because these things are wrong, but because these people don't understand and don't have faith. And so we get the second and final part of them trying to catch Jesus out, and as I'm sure you can imagine, it doesn't go very well. So let's just jump into it. We are in Luke chapter 20, going from verse 27. It says, "There came to Jesus some Sadducees, those who deny that there is a resurrection, and they asked him a question." So we've got Sadducees. You'll remember Pharisees, hopefully. They're the guys who are the religious leaders who are constantly trying to catch Jesus out and don't really like him. Sadducees and Pharisees usually go hand in hand a lot of the time in the Bible, but in the book of Luke, Sadducees aren't really mentioned very much. This is in fact the only time, according to my notes, that they are mentioned. So you don't really need to know tons of context about the Sadducees. They're basically kind of this priestly line that comes from around the time of King David, who, Jesus is... a lot of Jewish people point to Jesus as being son of David, and they give him that title quite a lot because he is a descendant from King David's line, as you remember way back at the beginning of Luke, where we had a genealogy that listed all of Jesus' ancestors. So the Sadducees were kind of a priestly line, priestly tradition that came up out of that. And essentially they don't believe in resurrection. They think resurrection is a load of rubbish, and so hearing Jesus talk about this idea of resurrection sounds very crazy to them, and so they try to catch him out, and so they come up with a question in order to outthink him, outlogic him on the topic of resurrection. So let's have a look at it. They say, "Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, having a wife but no children, the man must take the widow and raise up the offspring for his brother." So there was a law way back in the Old Testament where it talks about what happens if a woman is widowed. So if she's married into a family, typically women didn't have possessions, weren't owners of very much, and so if their husband died, then that was their source of income gone. That was their social stability, financial stability, just out of the door. If they had a son, their son could sort of pick that up and work, but otherwise they were sort of on their own, really. And so in the Old Testament, there was a law introduced that was saying that the brothers have to then marry. It would be the next brother who would then marry this woman, so that she would have someone to provide for her, someone to take care of her, and this brother would, care for her, do all the rest of it. And so they're coming out from that angle. So that's the context there. And they say, "Now there were 7 brothers. The first took a wife and died without children. And the second and the third took her, and likewise all 7 left no children and died. And afterward the woman also died. Now in the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had her as a wife." So this is a hypothetical situation they're throwing at Jesus. They're saying, all right, well, if that's the law there, we understand that to be the law that God's given us. So in this resurrection world, people come back afterwards. This woman is handed from one brother to the next brother because they keep dying, unfortunately. So when in the resurrection, will there be one woman with 7 different husbands? Is that God's plan? Is that what God wants? Is she equally married to all of them? Because a woman can only be married to one man. That's the rules. And so they've sort of engineered this situation to catch Jesus out, to trick him. Well, not necessarily to trick him. It is a genuine sort of question. It's not, if you were coming up with difficult situations, difficult challenges to pose to someone about resurrection, this would probably be one of them from a Jewish perspective. And so let's see what Jesus says to them. It says, he said, "The sons of this age marry and are given in marriage. But those who are considered worthy to attain to that age and to the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. For they cannot die any more, because they are equal to angels and they are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection. But that the dead are raised, even Moses showed in the passage about the bush, where he calls the Lord the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. Now he is not God of the dead, but of the living, for all live in him." Then some of the scribes answered, "Teacher, you have spoken well," for they no longer dared to give him any question. So Jesus gives quite a big answer there. He says quite a lot of things. We saw in the last passage, Jesus just says, this coin has Caesar's face on it, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God. Very simple, kind of straightforward explanation. But here Jesus goes more in depth. He kind of explains how the kingdom will be. And there's a couple of reasons why he does this. Firstly, because these guys are challenging him on something that's new ground. There isn't really that much of a biblical precedent for what would happen in this situation and what the resurrection actually looks like. And so this is a chance for Jesus to give his followers, give his disciples a bit of knowledge, a bit of information about what this sort of resurrected world will be like and what this kind of world after this world will look like. And so what do we find out from it? Well, Jesus says, "The sons of this age marry and are given in marriage." So that's simple enough. So the sons of this age are the people who are alive now, who are alive in the time of Jesus. These people marry and are given in marriage. So that's a simple start. We're all on the same page there. But he says, "But those who are considered worthy to attain to that age and to the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage." So on the surface that may seem like Jesus is like, well, if you're going to go to heaven, then don't get married, don't do any of that. That's not what he's saying. He's saying that marriage is just a thing for this age. For sons of this age, marriage is an institution that's established. And it's a good thing. It's something that God establishes. It's something in the Old Testament and also in the New Testament. It talks loads about marriage and the goodness and the fruit that comes out of marriage. Jesus wouldn't throw marriage out the window just like that. It is part of God's plan. But it isn't a permanent fixture in God's plan. Because in the resurrected world, Jesus is essentially saying that there isn't a need for it. Those who are considered worthy to attain to that age and to the resurrection, so those who make it into this new world, those who follow Jesus through faith, neither marry nor are given in marriage. So there's no institution of marriage after this point. In this new world, the marriage concept, the concept of marriage vows, it doesn't apply, at least in the same way that it does here. It just does. It's not a like-for-like comparison, Jesus is saying. And so in a sense, he's warning these people against comparing like the current world, our world, to something that is to come, something that's perfect, something that God's promised us. Jesus is saying, look, don't assume that you know what this is going to be like, because it's going to be different to how the world is currently, which is a good thing, because the world currently is imperfect. And so while something like marriage may be God's plan, for now, it isn't a permanent staple. It doesn't mean it's going to be there forever. He says, "For they cannot die anymore because they are equal to angels and are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection." So here Jesus moves on to talk more about the changing relationship that we have with God. So he's saying we can't die anymore because of this new age. We are like the angels. So when he says like angels, he means we're immortal. He means we're not subject to death and aging and things like that. We live forever. And we are sons of God. So he's saying sons of God. So sons have an inheritance. There's a family relationship. There's a loving relationship there. And he also says sons of the resurrection, being sons of the resurrection. So the sons of the resurrection part means we're born through this process. We're born through the idea of sort of this death and coming back to life. It's kind of like baptism. Baptism, you're put into the water, you die to your old self, and when you're raised from the water, you're a new person. And so it's the same concept here. It's this welcoming into this new life, and so there's a family element to it. And he says, but that the dead are raised, even Moses showed. So now he's saying, these people who don't believe in resurrection, he's saying, actually, in your Jewish scriptures, which you're trying to use to catch me out, there is precedent for the dead being raised. There is precedent for the resurrection. There are passages that point to it. And so he singles out Moses with the passage about the bush. So we won't go too much into this, but Moses was in the wilderness and God spoke to him through a burning bush. There was this bush that was on fire, but the bush wasn't sort of getting charred and falling away and shriveling. It was staying its same shape but on fire. And Moses took off his sandals. He was saying, I'm on holy ground. And God speaks to him through that bush. And what God says to him is that he is the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. So God is saying that he is the God of Moses's ancestors. He picks out several of his ancestors, and Jesus is saying this is evidence for resurrection because it shows that these ancestors aren't gone, like they aren't dead. God wouldn't be saying, "Oh, I'm the God of these dead people. I'm the God of death. I'm the God of things that are past, things that are in history that aren't relevant anymore." God is the God of life. We know that. The Bible tells us that constantly. So the fact that God introduces himself as the God of Abraham and of Isaac and of Jacob, that shows that he is a living God who is God of living things. And so that shows these guys are still living with him. They've come into a relationship with him. And so Jesus is saying, look, there's precedent for the resurrection in the Old Testament. You just weren't looking for it. You just didn't see it. You didn't understand. It's one of those times where Jesus clears up a mystery that surrounds the Old Testament, which is very cool, very cool. And so some of the scribes just kind of stand there and go, well, we got nothing left. And that's the last that we hear about these sort of these people trying to catch Jesus out like this, trying to send spies and sort of ask him tricky questions to try and disprove him. And that's the second and last time we get that. And so Jesus has shut them down pretty quickly. Normally things work in threes in the Bible. This time we only got two because that's how good Jesus was for this. We'll end that passage there for today. I don't want to speak too long about it because I don't want to start rambling. So I hope you all have a wonderful day and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.